using the resin infusion processing to make a car hood with this mold here. One must first apply a good layer of mold release before applying a gel coat. This ensures good release when removing the part. Sam here first buffed it out real nice, and now he's kind of doing the hand finishing. Beautiful work, Sam. A good application of our Release All 50 makes for a great release agent and a good mold release. Really smooth and really glassy finish he's got on there. Sam applies the tape to the outside of the periphery. Our Teflis MG2 1-inch and 2-inch tape is applied here. Again, this is so when they remove the tape, after putting on the gel coat, there's an area where the gel coat hasn't been applied. You can see it's important that he really gets that thing down there, all over all the edges, or anywhere that he doesn't want the gel coat to get to, for that matter. Before applying the gel coat to the mold, Sam's going to mix together the gel coat itself, putting in the catalyst and making sure that it's very well prepared and mixed so that when he does apply it, it dries to its full potential. Sam goes ahead and applies the gel coat to the spray gun, and from there we can proceed to spraying it onto the mold. As you can probably tell, we've turned on the vent hood so that the fumes from the spray gun and the gel coat itself, of course, don't contaminate the area and the operator. You can see that he's wearing the proper protective equipment. And away he goes. When applying the gel coat to the mold, we usually try and get it about 1 millimeter in thickness, which corresponds to about 20 to 30 thousandths of an inch thick. You can see the difference between the area that's been sprayed and the one that hasn't. It has a more of a flat finish to it. We have here the final product of our gel coat. You can see that it's very uniform. It's about 1 millimeter, which is 20 to 30 thousandths thick. You can see that it's a kind of a flat finish, but it looks very uniform across the entire laminate. Gel coat is done. We're going to begin using a carbon fiber cloth to make up the part, and then we'll also be using a tackifier, our own AirTac 2, as a tackifier spray adhesive. It's going to allow us to tack the cloth down against the mold and against subsequent applies. Gives it a good spray all over the carbon, and then he's going to take that and then stick it down against the mold. Nice and flush there. Nice and flush. Again, he's just applying another layer of the AirTac to adhesive. Make sure it sticks against that the gel coat underside. Notice that when he rolls the fabric, he makes sure that he gets all the lumps out, so the fabric is flush with the mold. So far he's laid one ply down through the front of the top of the mold. Laid it down nice and flat. You can see kind of down towards the front there, there's a pretty flush carbon to mold interface there. You can really see that he kind of has it around the edges. He's done a really good job there. And of course he's going to start cutting some of the excess. You'll notice the white non-woven bale fabric that's on the periphery of the cloth. What that is basically a preventative measure to keep the fabric from fraying. And yes, it is along the entire periphery of the cloth. Just kind of makes things easier in the long run. Smile for the camera. As you can see, we've completed the application of all the cloth that's going to go on today. Looks like we've done 4 plies. You can see that he's got them in there really tight. Done a pretty good job. He's got it cut out right where the lights in the hood are. Next we'll apply the peel ply and then some of the resin distribution media. Okay, now here comes the application of the peel ply. It's our own Acrylic peel ply. It's a silicone coated peel ply. That aids in its removal. And what we've done here is he sprayed the underside of it with AirTac 2, which is our spray adhesive. Now he's laying it down against the carbon part. A little bit of adhesive allows it to stick. Just wants to make sure he gets it in there nice and flush, nice and flat up against the carbon. One layer over the entire exposed sections of carbon. You can see these cutting slits in it right there. Kind of get it to lay flatter. It's a common technique when you have contours like that. As you can see, a lot of times the application of peel ply requires a couple of people. Again, Sam applies the adhesive to the back of it and proceeds to lay it up in the side of the part there. Sam has cut out where the tire would be in the wheel well of the car there. Sort of wrapped it in the corners. Looks a little messy now, but by the time it's done, it'll look pretty clean. Sam's laid down all the peel ply. Everything's in place. You can see we've got one layer, a few little overlaps here and there. Now we've applied the resin distribution medium here. It's almost all done, as you can see. This is the red mesh that you see here. This is our own product. It's called Resin Flow 60. This is basically going to allow the resin to creep throughout the part when it's in its wet form. Make sure that it gets under every square inch of that carbon. A little amount of the spray adhesive, the Urtac 2, just to make sure it sticks very well. He's got a little bit more to go there. Notice everywhere where there's peel ply, he places the resin distribution medium right over it. Now what you can see on the side of the part here is spiral wound polyethylene. You can see these also wrapped it in peel ply. This shelters the spiral wound polyethylene from the vacuum bag. You can see that the spiral wound pieces basically cover the entire edge of the part. It's on the entire underside. Polyethylene T-fitting that goes into the tubing on each side. This is the place we're going to apply a vacuum. As you can see, we've got a profile here of spiral tubing, the double-sided tape on the back of it that allows it to adhere to the mold, Airhold 10 CBS double back tape. And peeled back we have the Econolease peel ply. Now this peel ply is wrapped around the tubing to prevent the bag from going into the spiral there. It's a system that works very well. Around these bolts it's very important that we have breather and some steps that we've taken so that the bag doesn't go in there and pop from it. You can see on this side he's already covered some bolts here. There's a few more down here. Here Sam applies the remainder of the resin distribution media. Resin Flow 60. As you can see what he's doing here, he's taking the spiral wrapping of the polyethylene and wrapping it in the Resin Flow 60, kind of in a channel form. After he puts that together, he'll go ahead and take that, stick that on the part. Now here Sam's applying a polyethylene tee to the tube itself. It is here that resin will transfer into the part. Now all he has to do is just get it to stay there. You can see that it may take a decent amount of adhesive to get that spiral tubing to stick. There it is. Sam's applied all the channels of resin flow and spiral polyethylene tubing to the mold. The next step will be to connect those tubes off to a resin source and place the proper fittings so that that process can take place. Notice that Sam has applied a great deal of breather around the back side of the mold. That's mainly because we're going to be envelope bagging this. Basically taking a bag and enclosing the entire part, both back and front, so that there's no need to put any sealant tape, try and get a seal against the part itself. Just completely engulfing it. There he's doing that donut formation. Moves on to the next two. You'll notice that he joins solid tubing with some of that spiral wrap. It's easy to join the two pieces by wrapping the spiral around the solid tubing. Here he's got a 90-degree polyethylene fitting. Now we've got all the T's and the lines connected to all the channels. Those will be put in the resin. Preparing the vacuum bag for this, the big envelope bag for this part. The type of vacuum bagging film that we'll be using is a Brightlawn 5400. It's best to use a 2 or 3 mil film so you have the best chance of preventing leaks. Sam applies some of the AT200Y sealant tape to the bag here. Again, preparing for an envelope bagging process. Now they've set the bag down on kind of that podium there, and then they're going to take the bag and wrap it around the part. They'll wrap one side of one bag around the part, then they'll take another bag and they'll put another bag on top of that. And they'll use the AT200Y sealant tape at the edge of this bag and adhere the two, resulting in a complete envelope. Here comes the next bag. Well, here they go, placing the unsealant tape bag to right over the part there. There they go. Just putting the two bags together. Obviously somewhat of a two-man job this is. You can see that we've just about finished up with the bag here. Just about done. Got all the seams sealed on both sides. Enclosed the entire mold and everything in it. Now what they're doing here is placing both sides of the vacuum bag around the polyethylene tubing, because those have to come out of the bag and they have to get a good seal around those to make sure the vacuum integrity is maintained. Kind of doing a circular donut wrap there. You can see that we're drawing vacuum here from this fitting, closed in sealant tape. This line runs all the way down to our RB451 vacuum reservoir, where we suck vacuum off. We've got a regulator here. The pressure pot's designed so that if you do suck resin back in with this tube here, you're not going to get it in your regulator, you're not going to get it in your vacuum pump. It simply lands in the pot. Looks like we're going to be using a vacuum to suck out the bulk of the air that's inside the bag. Right now they're working the bag around so that when it does pull down, it pulls down evenly and there's no ridging in the mold spots where the bag might pop because it's stretched too thin. Here he goes, he's going to turn on the vacuum and suck all the air out. You can see that the bag's starting to recede. Starting to suck all that air out. At this point we're going to want to use the vacuum pump because we've got the majority of the air out. Notice that we have clamps on all of those polyethylene lines coming out that are going to suck resin. We clamp them down and then we apply a vacuum, and that enables us to get a good vacuum and test the vacuum integrity on the bag itself. Now they're applying vacuum, and as they do so, they work the bag in and around the little tight corners and around the areas where it's got to be there. They don't want any bridging. Vacuum bag integrity is very important in resin infusion processing. You can see they have worked the bag around those areas where the resin is going to transfer. That bag's really getting tight at this point. Vacuum's really pulling down on that mold right now. LEQ70 ultrasonic leak detector. It detects ultrasonic sound waves and can actually You can hear very tiny, high-pitched humming sounds that occur right next to a leak. What he does is he goes along the whole periphery of the part with this instrument to make sure that there's absolutely no leaks on the seal and tape bag interface there. Important when we do a leak check here to make sure that we check each of the pipes that we're going to use to suck in resin, because when the clamp's on it, we got to make sure that it's not letting any air through. It's got to have complete vacuum. So we check each of those with the leak detector. Here we are in the process of mixing the resin here. We're using an epoxy resin today for our resin fusion processing. Preparing the stream of resin lines to put it in the bucket. As you can see, we moved the clamps up so that we can take them off accordingly, one at a time. And begin. There he goes, he's emptying the first clamp, or disconnecting it rather. First two. You can see that the resin's made its way through the resin distribution medium and peel plant, spreading out. All the way up. Spreading out fairly quickly here.
Let's set up on here.
You can see that it's spreading with some significant speed there. Now while I'm holding the camera still, the resin's gradually creeping up. Here we go. Pretty even spread we've got there, huh?
Yeah, pretty good flow.
In the contours of the front of the hood there, you've kind of got that channel. Well, that's a low pressure area, and because of that, the resin flows very nicely in that area. Up here as well. We're about 5 minutes into it now. Soon we'll be unclamping some of the other polyethylene tubes. Let the resin flow into other areas of the part. We're about 13 minutes into it now. The resin has almost reached the second set of polyethylene tubes, and in a second we're going to go ahead and release the clamps and allow the resin to flow through the second set of tubes. Away she goes. See what a dramatic effect it has. That area just filling up with resin. Go ahead and release. We release the third clamp again. The resin showing a very rapid distribution here. We're about 20 minutes into it now, and you can see that the resin is distributed quite a bit into the part here. As you can see, we're putting the clamp back on the middle line here. Prevent any more resin from going down that path. In a moment we'll be releasing some of the others. Looks like we've got about 2/3, 3/4 of the part covered. We're about 24 minutes into it now. Okay, we're letting off the fourth clamp now. Notice also that we've reclamped the second one we let go originally. That's to prevent more resin from oversaturating the part. Hey Jerry, you can really see that when you let go of that third clamp, the resin just rushes right in there, fills the part out real well. About 29 minutes into it right now. I'm getting closer. Okay, go ahead, Sam. Here he goes with the last clamp on the right side. Resin pouring into that section of the part. Again, clamping off one of the previously open lines of resin. You can see that the resin has made its way up the side of the part there fairly well. You can see that it's still going. It's creeping up pretty quickly. We're at about 45 minutes now. This side of this thing is pretty saturated. There's some areas up in the corner that the resin hasn't gotten to yet,
The same setup.
but it's pretty saturated right now.
We're gonna put it closer together.
The last clamp here. Same situation. We're at a timetable of about 49 minutes now.
Hey, Gary.
We've applied some sealant tape here. There was a leak in the bag. It resulted in a whole bunch of air bubbles rushing through there. Just stuck some sealant tape on it, some AT200Y to get that leak taken care of. We've got another one over here that we dealt with earlier. You really have to, I should say, shut those leaks off or throw some sealant tape on there. Otherwise you're going to end up with a lot of air in your part and a lot of voids. Areas in the cloth where there isn't any resin. The resin coming to a bit of a halt there, but still creeping along very slowly in the last portion of the part there.
The light green or the darker green? Very light. Yeah.
Looks like the part's just about done here. About an hour and 15 minutes into it. Part's all saturated and ready to go. Now we're going to close off all those clamps. Let the part sit for about 18 hours. Overnight's always good. There we go. As you can see, we've taken the vacuum bag off the molding part here and we're demolding. Taking off all the polyethylene tubing. Started to remove the peel ply and the resin distribution medium there. Resin Flow 60 resin distribution media. Remove that from the back side of the part. And here we go with the finished product. Very shiny surface you got there. Carbon fiber cloth underneath. Gives for a beautiful luster and a really attractive finish there. Good finished product.